In the name of Allah, Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon all of you. We'd like to welcome you in this morning in which we are broadcasting the sessions, series of sessions of the tax authority to inform the public about the taxation in Oman. This session is broadcasted in the different accounts of tax authority through Twitter and also the SMEs Development Authority Twitter accounts. We've started the series with 3 sessions to raise awareness about the VAT that was implemented this year in 2021 and we are at the end of this year. This session today is allocated for the VAT in the special zones and economic zones in the Sultanate. And in the session, I'd like to welcome Mr. Mohammed bin Jamil Al-Saifi, the Policies Department Manager in the Tax Authority. We'd like to welcome you, Mr. Mohammed, in this session and in this new session of the Tax Authority series of sessions to raise awareness about the VAT implemented in the Sultanate of Oman. Good morning, Mr. Mohammed. I would like to welcome you also, dear audience, viewers in different platforms that are broadcasting this session in which we will be talking about the special zones and the free zones in light of the implementation of the VAT in the Sultanate of Oman. We'll highlight some milestones, some pillars of applying the VAT in the special zones and what are the incentives given for the investors in the zones. Yes, the law has specified the in its articles specific conditions for the special zones. And in this session, on the presentation that will be given, we will get to know the mechanisms of applying the VAT in these special zones, and we welcome any inquiry or any comments on this session. You can comment on the YouTube channel. This session is also broadcasted in English. Interpreted simultaneously in another channel for English viewers. We'll start the presentation with Mr. Mohammed. So let's begin with our presentation about the special zones and economic zones and the VAT in the Sultanate of Oman. We will define the phrase free zones and the special economic zones. And what are the special zones that are allocated for VAT purposes, and also taxes on supplies to these special zones and economic zones. These are the main themes of our presentation today. We start with the definition of free zones and special economic zones. These economic zones and free zones, they are locations, areas in the Sultanate established to provide special incentives, advantages, and facilitations for investors to encourage them having businesses in these areas. These economic zones have specific incentives and advantages so that they attract the investors, and because of the facilitations and services provided for the investors. The VAT law came to complement these incentives, adding new advantages to those investors, like the tax exemptions. We are talking about the income tax. They are not taxed for 30 years. Also the foreign ownership. Foreigners can own the institutions by 100% fully. as a foreign investments. Also the capital and the profits with 100%. Also we have customs exemptions. They are exempted from the customs for importing and re-exporting. Also in Oman we have a transparent legal framework. Yes, there are a number of incentives and advantages in order to attract the foreign investments to the Sultanate of Oman. Also there are incentives related to the VAT that we'll be talking about later. Yes, later we will go into details according with regard to the incentives provided to the investors in the special zones with regard to the VATs. For the private zone, the law has stipulated privileges and incentives for the zones to the special and private zones that are classified as special zones according to the law, and this goes in line with the Oman Vision 2040 to stimulate economy in these zones. The special zones are free zones and special economic zones that are classified by the tax authority as a special zone and are subject to a tax of zero for the supplies or services within special zones in accordance with the provisions of the executive regulations of the VAT law. There are a number of conditions that shall be met by these zones so that they can be classified as special zones. They should be as a designated free or special economic zone in the Sultanate in accordance with the laws in force. It shall have the procedures for controlling the movement of goods. They have to have procedures to control the movement of goods from those zones to another areas or into them. And they shall be supervised and managed by the authority responsible for this special zone. Any other conditions imposed by the tax authority to define such special zones in order to control the supplies. Maybe the tax authority in the future will add more conditions in addition to those conditions discussed. The special zones in Oman, we have Salala free zone, we have Al Mazyuna free zone, we have Suhar free zone, and we have Duqm economic zone, special economic zone. Among the conditions we've seen, Mr. Muhammad, is that there should be controlling of the movement of goods. Can you clarify this point? What do you mean of the controlling? Is it to control the movement of goods by the tax authority or the administration of the free zone? Yes, the controlling shall be by the authority responsible for the free zone, in addition to for specific supplies or services. They need to be controlled and to be verified by the competent authority that are responsible for the borders, like the General Directorate for Customs, for the ROB. We will talk about these procedures later in case of the movement of the goods. These are examples for the zones that are considered as special zone qualified for the VAT. We have Mazyuna free zone, we have Suhar free zone. As if we want to apply the definition of the special zone on Muscat Airport. It is not specified as an economic zone or special zone. So it is not considered, Muscat Airport is not considered as a free zone. Also, Sultan Qaboos Port is not considered as an economic special zone. So from this list, we can see only 2 examples that are applicable, that the VAT is applicable to them, like Al-Mazyuna, free zone, or Suhar, free zone. Yes, what I take from you is that they shall be declared as a free zone by the related law. The tax authority is specifying those free zones and special zones, and they are provided with the license to be qualified as free zones for the VAT application. Now let's go to the registration of the VAT. The registration, we have tackled this definition in many events, but we should reaffirm it again. The definition of the VAT registration. Every person carrying out an activity in the Sultanate of Oman must assess the necessity to register for VAT. Companies registered in the special zones are considered to be resident in the Sultanate of Oman. Therefore, they shall consider if they have to register or not. These special zones, they have to register and to consider if they are qualified to be free zones for the VAT application. Though there are different categories. The first category is those who shall register. Those are institutions and individuals whose annual revenues exceeds the mandatory registration threshold, which is 38,500 Omani Riyal. There are also institutions and persons who have to register whatever revenues they have. Those who are having supplies of commodities and services in the Sultanate, but they have no resident in the Sultanate. Those who have no residence in the Sultanate, they shall register whatever their revenues are, if they have services and revenues. The third category are the institutions and individuals whose annual revenues are between the voluntary registration threshold, which is 19,250 Omani Riyal, and is less than 38,500 Omani Riyal, which is the mandatory registration threshold. Why the unresident institutions and individuals have to register? Yeah, I'm talking in general. Why those who are not residing in the Sultanate have to register in the VAT, as you said, in the second category? Why they have to do it? They have to register because this institution or this person is conducting the process of supplying, and they are not residing in the Sultanate. So the law, in order to have a controlling these supplies, stipulated that they shall register whatever revenues they have. For example, if the annual revenue taxable of supplies amounted to 50,000 Omani Riyal for a company registered in the Salalah free zone. So this company is resident. This company has an annual revenue which is exceeding the mandatory registration threshold. So they are registered or considered as economic zone registered for taxation. These are the steps for registering for the VAT. Just to confirm, maybe we have confirmed this several times, and this is the general mechanism for registering the VAT, so that it is be it in the private zone, special zone, or in other places. We use the companies or individuals, they start by visiting the website of the tax authority, and then they log in through the electronic verification using the card reader, and then the third step, they shall fill in the electronic form, and the customer will register in the VAT. There is an electronic form for the VAT registration. They will fill in that form, and they will attach the documents needed. And then this will be sent to the tax authority. The tax authority system will automatically issue a receipt to the company or individual, so that they can follow up the completion of their request. If there are missing documents uploaded, can the applicant know that they have missing documents? Yes, there are mandatory fields in the form that shall be filled by the applicant. They cannot skip that point. And also there is specific conditions for each of these fields. So the system automatically will inform the applicant of the updates that can distinguish between the information missing and the information that are needed and not filled. For example, if there is a wrong number, a wrong email, this is done automatically by the form. Now let's move to the tax processing, taxation of the special zones. The taxation of the free zones, the VAT is a general consumption tax imposed on most goods and services. There are specific exceptions exempted by the law and excessive regulations. For example, the special zone. The special zone, they have this advantage that we already mentioned. Those specific, those private zones are areas located within Oman's borders. So therefore, they are subject to the provisions of the VAT law. The tax rates in Oman, we have 5%, we have 0%, and we have exemption. For the 5%, they are imposed on the supplies of the goods and services, with 5% of the total amount of the supply. The VAT is not imposed on the supplies that are subject to 0%, and also there are exemptions on specific supplies exempted by the law. Through the taxation of the private zone, let's talk about the supply of services. These are the supplies that are not a supply of goods, such as restaurants, computer repair, financial services, transportation, consulting, cleaning services. All of these are considered as supplies of services, not supplies of goods. The taxation of the special zone, they are taxable at a rate of 0, provided that they meet the following conditions. The customer must be taxable, registered for VAT. the customer must be person licensed by the authority responsible for the economic zone. Those supplies that will be taxable with a 0%, they shall be taxable. They should be registered for VAT in the tax authority, and the customer should be licensed by the supervising authority for the special zone. We have a number of authorities like Mada'in, we have Duqm Economic Zone, we have also the Public Authority for the free zones and special zones. They are the operating authorities of these special zones. Let's take this example. If we have a contractor, if we have a company licensed by the supervisor or by the operator as a free zone in Salalah and not registered for VAT, this company will have a contract with the another contractor. So our question is it at a 0% taxable? The answer is no. Why? Because this company has not registered in the tax authority for VAT. So it shall register before it is getting the 0% rate. As for the surfaces, the surface should be linked to the activity conducted by the company in the free zone. So it will be taxable at a rate of 0 for the supplies and services within the area of the special zone and for the purposes of the company, not for personal purposes. The customer must sign a declaration confirming that he is licensed by the operating and the supervising authority of the special zone and that he has received services for the purposes of the activity in the special zone, not for their own purposes. They shall declare that they have the supply for the purpose of their activity in the special zone, and then the supplier may not apply the 0 rate in the event that the declaration is not obtained from the customer. So the supplier shall obtain that declaration from the customer before applying the 0 rate of VAT. So these are steps that shall be followed by the customers in order to get 0% of VAT. Do you have a specific form for the declaration, or they are general? Yeah, they are general declarations. These declarations shall confirm that the customer is licensed by the authority, and they shall declare that they got the supply for the purpose of the activity of the company. Taxable at a rate of 0, supplying of services to a special zone shall meet the following conditions, which are: these services shall not include catering, hotel, food, beverage, cultural, artistic, sports, educational services provided for in Section 5 of Article 24 of the VAT law. These services are not taxed with 0, so these services are exempted from the 0 taxation because so these services shall not be exempted by Article 46. Those services are healthcare services, goods and related services, financial services, education services, rental of real estate for residential purposes. these services are already exempted, so they are not covered by the 0% exemption because they are already exempted by the law in accordance with Article 24 of the VAT law. We have an example here. We have a company A leased a land in the free zone in Suhar. Is that supply taxed at a rate of 0%? The answer is no, because this land is an empty land and the empty lands are tax-free according to Article 47. Supply of taxable services to special zones by a taxable person. They are taxed at a 0% if they meet the conditions. Taxable at a rate of 5% in all other cases, except for exempted supplies in accordance with the provisions of the law. We have a number of services that are supplied to the special zones. So we have two cases. The first case is that they are taxed at 0 if they meet the condition, and 5% if they are not exempted. This is an example. A company A is registered for VAT and provide advisory and consultation services to a company licensed in the free zone, for example in Salalah, and this company is also registered as a VAT. The company B has provided a declaration that the consultancy relates to its activity in the region. So our question is this supply taxed at a rate of 0%? The answer is yes, because it meets the conditions of a zero taxable supply. The second example, be it a bank, Bank A is registered for VAT and provides financial services to B company licensed in Salalah Free Zone. And this company is registered for VAT. So the registration is there, but Company B has provided a declaration that the services relate to its activity in the region. So is this supply taxed at a rate of 0? The answer is no. Why? Because the financial services are already exempted by the law from taxes. So these are only examples to apply the conditions that we already discussed. Supply of taxable services to special zones by a non-taxable supplier in Oman. Tax is not imposed by the supplier because the supplier is not registered in the VAT, and therefore he is not qualified to impose the taxation, as he is not registered, be it in the economic zone or in other places. Let's give an example here. Company A is not registered for VAT and provides electronic services to Company B in Salalah Free Zone. Company B has not provided a declaration that the services will be used for the purposes of its activity in the free zone. So our question is the supply taxable? The answer is no. Why? Because the company is not registered, the supplier is not registered in the VAT. The companies, institutions that are not registered in the VAT authority, they are not eligible to impose the tax. The other example here, Company A is not registered for VAT and has repaired the air conditioners for B company registered in Salalah Free Zone. The question is the supply taxable? The answer is no, because the supplier is not registered for VAT. Now let's move to another point. Supply of taxable services to special zones by a non-resident supplier. Taxed at 0% if they meet the conditions. taxable at a rate of 5% in all other cases except for exempted supplies. And we have repeated this. The customer shall calculate the tax in accordance to the reverse calculation mechanism. The reverse calculation mechanism is a mechanism in which the tax is calculated for the services and goods to calculate this tax in this event. Supply of services within within special zones, they are from another taxable person. These are taxed at 0% if they meet the conditions. Let's have this example. We have company A registered for VAT and owns a warehouse in the free zone of Salalah. This company leased the warehouse to a company B licensed in the area in the free zone and registered for taxation. Company B provided the declaration that the store would be used for the purposes of its activity within the economic zone. Our question is it taxable? The answer is yes, because both companies are registered and they are operating the special zone in free zone in Salalah, for example, and they have the declaration. Another example, if a company A contracted with company B to repair and maintain computers within the company A office in the Doqom economic zone. Company A provided a declaration. We said that declaration is mandatory. So the company A provided a declaration that the services would be used for the purposes activity in the zone. The two companies are registered for VAT and licensed to operate in Doqom economic zone. Our question is it taxable at 0%? Yes, because they meet all of the conditions. Another example, if someone bought a dinner from restaurant in Doqom economic zone, is this supply taxed at a rate of 0%? Many people will say that the economic zone is a 0% taxable zone, but in reality, no, there are specific conditions and procedures that should be met by the supplier so that they can be taxable at 0%. This example of the dinner, buying a dinner from a Doqom economic zone, they are not taxed at a 0% because restaurant services are exempted from 0% taxation, so they are taxable of 5%. Taxable supplies from special zones to Oman, for example, from Al Mazyuna free zone, Salalah free zone, to the local market, are they taxable at 0%? No, they are taxable at 5%, excluding the 0% supplies like the food stuff, the medical stuff. These goods are already exempted and declared by the tax authority, or the medications or food stuff. Some of these medications, some of these goods are exempted wherever they are imported. We have an example here. We have company A has a warehouse in Qurum and has contracted with the company B to maintain the warehouse's loudspeaker system. Company B is registered for VAT and licensed to work in Doqom economic zone. So this company came to the company in A in Al Qurum. So is this supply taxed at a 0%? The answer is no. They are not taxed at 0% because supply is within the Sultanate. it's like coming from another, as an exporting from the special zone to the local market. So we have now taxable supplies to a customer in another special zone within Oman, or to the, for example, to Al-Mazuna or Salala. So the transfer of goods and services is between the free zones. These supplies are taxed at 0% if the conditions are met, if the supplies are transferred between the special zones and free zones. Also have another example, supply of taxable services from special area to outside the Sultanate. These types of supplies are taxed at 0%, subject to conditions for the export of services. It will be like exporting of services from those special zones to another country. Let's have this example. We have company A is registered for VAT and licensed to work in the Al-Mazuna free zone, and its activities is to have advertisements, promotion, marketing in a company registered in Iraq and residing in Iraq. The advertisements will be published in Iraq. Company B has no activities in Oman. So our question is the supply taxed at a 0% or 5%? It will be taxed at a 0% because this supplies for a non-resident customer in Oman and benefits from services outside. So these services are exported to another country and is being consumed in outside the geographical borders of Oman. So it is taxed to the 0%. For the supply of goods, they are the physical assets, including water, all kinds of energy, electricity, gas. They are taxable at a rate of taxable at a rate of 0%. When the conditions are met. When these conditions are met, for example, there are energy planets and energy companies. So those companies are provided electricity from these planets. So these services are taxable with 0%, provided that the customer is taxable, registered for VAT. The customer must be licensed and registered by the operator and supervisor of the special zone. So they are registered both in the VAT authority, in the tax authority, and also in the authority responsible for the free zone, like Mada'in, Doqam free zone, any other authority responsible for these free zones, or that will be established in the future. They are taxed at a free 0%. So they are taxable at a rate of 0%, supplying goods or transporting them within Oman to a special zone, provided that the following condition is met, is that the customer must have received services for the purposes of the activity. So the condition is that the activity shall be within those free zones. If we supply these goods from the local market to one of these free zones, for example, electricity, water, gas, so we transfer them from the local market to the free zones. Is this a 0% taxable? Yes, they are a 0% taxable, but they have to be registered in the VAT authority, and also they have to be licensed by the competent authorities for the private zones, and also they have to receive the services for their activities in the special zone. The customer shall declare that they are licensed and that they have received the service for the purposes of the activities in the free zone. If they don't get the declaration from the customer, they shall not impose the tax. So the customer must sign the declaration confirming that he is licensed by the operator, by the competent authority, and he has received the goods for the purposes of the activity. Another condition is that the goods shall not be among the goods exempted. For example, the goods or services used for recreational services, food and beverage catering services, motor vehicles and associated goods with vehicles, and for personal uses, or vehicles for transporting no more than 10 passengers, including the driver, excluding vehicles used in vehicle rental activity or vehicles registered as emergency vehicles. So these goods are exempted from the 0% tax according to 56 article of the regulation. If these conditions are not met, the tax should not be taxed at a rate of 0%. So the suppliers, if they see that these conditions are not met, they shall not impose a 0% tax to those customers, and impose 5%, except if they are excluded. The rental services and the emergency vehicles, you mean the vehicles registered in the free zones? We are talking about the receivers. The receivers of the services are in the free zones, be it economic zones or free zones, special zones or free zones. If these vehicles are registered in those free zones for the purpose of rental, or to be registered are emergency vehicles, they are not taxed with zero taxation. They are, because they are exempted before by the law. They are exempted. It has its own procedures, but the personal assets, they are taxed with 5%. Let's move to another point. Supply or transport of goods within special zones. The supply or transportation of goods within the special zones is taxed at a rate of 0% according to the conditions, and if they meet the conditions. If we are talking about, for example, the free zone in Suhar, in Salalah, the services and there are goods that are transported within the free zone between a company and another company, are they taxed with 0%? Yes, they are taxed with a 0%, provided that the conditions are met. For example, a company A sold boxes and paper bags to B in the Doqom economic zone. So both of the companies are within the Doqom economic zone. The company B provided a declaration that the goods would be used for the purpose of the activity in the zone. So both of the companies are registered and they are licensed by the competent authorities. So is this supply taxed at a 0%? Yes, because this supply is qualified as it met the conditions specified. In the case of supplying or transportation of goods from the special zones to Oman, the tax on the import of goods is due to the importer of goods when the goods exit the suspended customs station in Oman or to Oman. Tax is due. We are talking about the goods that are produced within the special zones. These goods are considered as being produced outside the Sultanate. So when we are importing them to Oman, they are as importing them from another country. So they are taxable when they are released from the customs station. Let's have this example. A company A sold ready-made clothes to B in Muscat, to B company in Muscat. Company is registered for VAT and licensed to work in the Qom economic zone. But it is selling the clothes to another company in Muscat. Is the supply taxed at 0%? No, because the company in Muscat is importing that supply from that free zone. In the case of transporting goods from outside Oman to the special zones, there is an advantage if the supply is to be from an exporter from outside the Sultanate into a special zone. They have the tax is suspended in the port. It is taken directly to the special zone. So the tax is suspended when the goods are coming from outside to the economic zones. So they are treated with the same way the goods exported are treated, taking into account the transitional provisions at the GCC countries, because some of the GCC countries are currently considered non-taxable countries. Let's have this example. If company A exported vehicle tires to B company in India, company A is registered for VAT and licensed to work in the Qom economic zone and is exporting tires, vehicle tires to another company in India. Is the supply taxed at 0%? Yes, because it is an export. Export is taxed at 0%. In the case of transporting goods from special zones to one of the pending customs taxation, it is according to the customs law. There are many cases, and this is one of the cases. There are 5 cases of the pending customs. If these goods are transported from the special zones to one of these cases, then we have a 0% taxation. In the case of transferring goods from one of the pending customs, they have 0% taxation if they meet the conditions. Let's have this example. If company A transported pipes and other building materials from a customs warehouse to its warehouses in the Salalah free zone, company A is registered for VAT and licensed to work in the Salalah free zone. So our question, is the supply taxed at 0%? The answer is yes, because it has been transferred from a warehouse of customs to another warehouse in the special zone or the free zone in Salalah. So this transportation or supply is taxable with 0%. Can you talk about the suspension of taxation, be it in the customs warehouses? The customs warehouses, they have their own provisions according to the Unified Customs Law, and the specific conditions that should be met by the warehouses for customs. The importers know these conditions. The warehouse, for example, shall be managed by the customs, and the customs officer shall control those warehouses. There are also other conditions related to the specifications of the warehouse, in addition to guarantees that shall be provided by the companies, because the warehouses are having goods that are not taxed yet. So this is an advantage for the importers. So if the importers shall meet the conditions of these warehouses. These specifications are detailed in the Unified Customs Law. For the taxation, we have the input tax deduction. Let's talk about the input tax deduction. Companies operating in the special zones and registered for VAT are entitled to have deduced input taxation in accordance with the terms of the deduction. There are specific conditions in the regulations that shall be met. Input tax is entitled to be deducted for taxable supplies. Input tax is not entitled to be deducted for exempted supplies, because they are already exempted. Also, relative deduction for co-expenses or shared expenses. There is like there is a specific percentage of deduction. The taxable person shall submit tax returns on time. The tax persons, they have to submit those tax returns quarterly. There is 30 days after the end of the first quarter, so that the taxable persons shall submit their returns. Also, the taxable persons shall issue the tax bills, keep accounting records, and they shall comply with the provisions of the law and regulations. There are a number of regulations and conditions, procedures that shall be met by the taxable persons, and they are well detailed in the regulations of the VAT. These are the steps of submitting the tax returns in the tax authority. All of these services are provided in the portal of the tax authority. One of these services is the tax returns submission. This service is selected from the website and then filling the electronic form. The electronic form has 7 fields, like the output tax, input tax, the net tax that should be paid. Also, the company can request the return of the tax if there is returned tax. So on the website, all of these services are provided for our clients, and they can apply for them. There is like a checklist. It's called Tax Bear Checklist. You have to fill in this checklist and to attach it with the tax returns. In addition to the supporting documents like the tax invoices, that proved those taxation. When the data are filled and the documents are attached, you click on the submit button and click on yes, so that the request will go directly from the portal to the tax authority. Does it take time to process this request? After submitting the returns, the system will directly accept the returns, and then you can also print it out, so you can have it. You have a reference number, and everything will be there in that printed page. As I said, all of these services are electronic services, and services are within reach. We have taken into consideration a number of factors when we have designed these forms so that they can be easily understood by our clients, and this will help our customers submitting this submission. Let's move to the last point in the taxation, which is penalties. And this is the last solution we have to impose penalties and on those who violate the procedures and the law. Those penalties are imposed on those who violate the laws and procedures. Sometimes we have to impose these penalties. They are between 500 Oman Riyal to 10,000 Oman Riyal, depending on the nature of the violation. Also, there is 2 to 3 years, 2 months to 3 years imprisonment for the crime committed. So the violator may be imprisoned for 2 months to 3 years, according or based on the nature of the violation. These penalties are only applied in the as a final solution because we have the guideline for taxation. It is available on the website of the tax authority. You can download that guideline, examine it, and make it as a guide for the taxable persons and institutions. This guidelines details everything. We have a number of guidelines for registration, guidelines for return submission, guidelines for certificate issuance. So we publish them from time to time. We have another guideline now for the special zone and the free zone, and the taxation related to the free zones and the special zones. So you can download that guideline from our website. This guideline is complementary to the regulations and to the details stipulated by the regulations, internal regulations. These guidelines are written in simple languages with some graphics so that we facilitate the understanding of the law. We have also call center. You can call at any time to inquire about anything which is not clear with regard to the taxes. We have received a number of inquiries using this center, and then we met with taxable persons and institutions to clarify some ambiguous points. And this session is part of our efforts to shed light on this regard. Yes, this is a tremendous effort done by the tax authority in order to clarify the points related to the tax authority. We have received a number of questions. Let's have them quickly. There is a question: the competent authority that is controlling the transport of goods is the Customs Directorate in ROB. So how this is managed? Is it all with the Customs Directorate, or the tax authority plays a role? The tax authority does not play a role in this. There is a port, the customs officers there who are responsible for managing, controlling the movement of goods from and to the economic zones, from economic zone to another economic zone. There is the controlling is done by the customs officers. Some of the containers, also the controlling of the containers also is done by the customs officers. It is fully managed by the customs officers. They play a major role in controlling those commodities and goods, be it to the Sultanate of Oman or to other countries. And we extend our thanks to the customs officers for what they have done. Also, the VAT regulations have mentioned the roles of the operating authorities of this economic zone and free zones. It is in the regulations and it is being mentioned clearly. Another question: Khalid Siabi said that the goods transported from the local market to the free zone, for the transportation, do we have taxation? Is it taxable? It depends on the process. Does the company meet or the surface meet the conditions? For example, is the surface is only for the purpose of the activities in the free zone? Is the receiver registered? What's the purpose of a transportation? Is the company licensed to work in the free zones? After examining these conditions, then we can say if those supplies are 5% taxed or 0% taxed. Another question is with regard to the competent authorities and operating authorities. What are the roles of those competent authorities? One of the most important roles of these competent authorities is to raise awareness of the companies licensed in these companies with regard to the VAT law. The second role is to control the goods, to control the movement of these goods. And one of the articles, I think 107 in the regulations, it stipulated that the goods supplies within the free zones or to the free zones or among the free zones, they shall be documented and verified by the competent authority or operating authority of the free zone or the economic zone. Thank you, Mr. Mohammed Saifi. We have the honor to receive you in this session today. We were delighted to talk about this topic related to the application of the VAT in the free and economic zones in the Sultanate. And we will continue our series of sessions and also will continue to receive your inquiries on our accounts. in addition to our partners such as the SMEs Development Authority and other institutions. We will have other episodes and sessions in the next weeks. Thank you for watching and thank you for being with us. Assalamu alaikum.